It was a quiet afternoon, and I was folding tiny baby clothes on the couch, listening to my grandson breathe softly in his crib. For months, I cooked their meals, cleaned the house, and rocked that baby at 3 a.m. so my son and his wife could sleep. I truly believed I was helping, that I was wanted, that this was our shared home. I never expected to hear that I was the problem who had to go. I also knew something they seemed to forget. If you're watching this, please like the video, subscribe, and tell me from where you are watching today. My days in that house used to start very gently. I would wake up before everyone else, tie my hair back, and make a pot of warm oatmeal just the way my son liked since childhood. The kitchen would still be dark, quiet, peaceful. I enjoyed those early moments. The baby would start fussing, and before my daughter-in-law even opened her eyes, I would already be in the nursery lifting that tiny boy into my arms. I fed him, burped him, changed him, and rocked him while the sun slowly pushed through the curtains. It felt like a second chance at motherhood, like a gift life had given me after years of loneliness. I told myself I was lucky to still be needed. My son would come downstairs half awake, thanking me softly for the help. He worked long hours. I saw how tired he was, how overwhelmed he looked being a new father. I wanted to ease his burden. I cooked breakfast for him, packed his lunch, and made sure he left with a clean shirt and a warm meal. I didn't want anything from him. I only wanted him to feel supported. I am his mother. That never changes. When my daughter-in-law finally came down, she would glance at me, sometimes giving a polite nod, sometimes barely acknowledging I existed. Still, I never made it a problem. She had just given birth. She was exhausted, adjusting, hormonal, sensitive. Every new mother is. I kept reminding myself to be patient. I told myself she didn't mean the coldness, the distance, the small little sighs she made whenever I entered a room. I convinced myself that people soften with time, that love grows when you live under one roof. So I ignored the signs. During the day, I washed their laundry, folded clothes, cleaned bottles, wiped down counters, and put meals on the table. I didn't think of it as work. I thought of it as family life. I believed we were building a home together. Late at night, when the baby cried again and again, I would rush before she even woke up. My daughter-in-law once told a visitor, "Oh, the baby sleeps so well." She didn't know it was because I was awake more than the baby was. But I didn't mind. I loved that child deeply, and I loved caring for him. Every time I walked past the living room, I saw pictures of their little family framed on the walls, my son, my daughter-in-law, and the baby smiling in matching outfits. I was not in any of the photos, not a single one. I told myself it wasn't personal. People take pictures with just the immediate family. I convinced myself not to feel the sting. I convinced myself to stay quiet. But slowly, things started feeling different. My daughter-in-law began closing doors that used to stay open. She started giving short replies instead of friendly ones. She began turning off the lights when I was still in the room, almost as if she wanted to erase my presence. But I pushed the thoughts away. "She's tired," I kept saying to myself. "She needs space." When she walked past me without saying good morning, I convinced myself she was just having a rough day. I didn't know she was counting my movements, judging my footsteps, and wishing for the day I would leave. But the truth is, I was happy in that house. I felt useful, needed, important. I felt like I still had a purpose. After losing my husband and spending years living alone, being in a home full of noise and life made me feel alive again. I didn't want to imagine that someone in that very home could see me as a burden. I didn't expect anyone to resent the help I freely gave. I didn't imagine that my quiet routine, my warm meals, and my gentle presence could ever bother anyone. But that's the thing about betrayal. It doesn't announce itself. It hides behind smiles, polite voices, and thank yous that sound real but mean nothing. I lived in that home believing everything was normal. I believed they appreciated me. I believed I was part of the family. I believed a new baby brought us closer. I believed my daughter-in-law valued my help. I believed all of it. But what I didn't know was that every single kind act I did, Every diaper I changed, every meal I cooked, every night I stayed awake, every effort I made was quietly building irritation inside her. I didn't know she was counting the days until she had the courage to say the words she had been rehearsing for weeks. I didn't know she had been talking to her mother about setting boundaries. I didn't know she looked at me not as help, but as a shadow taking up space in her house. I truly believed we were a family. I didn't know the storm was already forming, and it was heading straight for me. The first real crack in the peace of that home happened on a quiet afternoon. I was in the living room, folding freshly washed baby blankets. The TV was off. The baby monitor was beside me. Everything felt calm. That was when I heard low voices coming from the kitchen, my son and his wife. Their tones were sharp, tense, nothing like the cheerful faces they showed when I was standing in front of them. At first, I tried not to listen. A mother does not want to hear her child argue with his spouse. But then I heard my name. "She's always here. I can't relax," my daughter-in-law said, her voice tight and irritated. "I feel like I'm being watched in my own home. I need peace. I need space." My heart froze. Her words pierced through me. Peace? Space? What did I do except cook, clean, and take care of her child? I stayed quiet, stayed helpful, stayed respectful. But to her, I was a disturbance, a burden, a problem. My son mumbled something I couldn't hear. He wasn't defending me. I could tell by the silence that followed. He was trying to keep her calm, trying not to disagree, trying to avoid the tension. That silence hurt more than anything she said. A daughter-in-law can dislike me, but a son's silence? That is a wound. When I stepped toward the kitchen doorway, the whispers died instantly. My daughter-in-law suddenly changed her voice, sweet, high, cheerful. "Oh, there you are. We were just talking about dinner plans," she said with a smile so forced it almost looked painful. She brushed past me and adjusted a flower vase that didn't need adjusting. My son avoided my eyes. He busied himself with a glass of water he didn't even drink. In that moment, I could feel it. The air had changed. The house didn't feel warm anymore. It felt divided. Me on one side, them on the other. A few days later, the tension sharpened even more. I walked into the living room holding a tray of soup for her, thinking maybe she was overwhelmed and needed comfort. She took the bowl and gave me that same tight smile again. But as soon as I turned my back, I heard her exhale harshly and mutter under her breath, "She doesn't understand boundaries." The words weren't even whispered. They were spit out. I froze mid-step. For the first time, the house that once felt like family felt like a place I was overstaying. Small things started happening. She would stop talking the moment I entered a room. She moved the rocking chair from the living room into the nursery and closed the door, making it clear I should not enter unless asked. She locked certain cabinets. She reorganized the kitchen to her liking, placing things on high shelves I couldn't reach. She placed her scented candles and decorations everywhere, as if marking territory. But the worst was the way she looked at me sometimes, like she was already imagining where my luggage would sit once I was out of the house. One evening, I came downstairs to warm a bottle for the baby, and I heard her on the phone. "I just need my house back," she whispered. "I need quiet. I can't rest with her around. She means well, but this is my home." Her voice cracked with frustration, not sadness, not exhaustion, frustration. She didn't know I was standing behind the doorway. She didn't know my hands were shaking as I held the bottle. She didn't know the pain growing inside me. My son came home later that night. I expected him to say something, anything, but he acted as if everything was normal. He gave me a small smile and walked upstairs, ignoring the heaviness in the room. He wasn't choosing me. He wasn't choosing her. He was choosing silence. And silence can cut deeper than words. That night, I lay awake in the guest room, listening to the house I once filled with help and love, realizing that the warmth I felt was one-sided. I thought we were bonding as a family. I thought I was supporting them, but she saw me as noise, as clutter, as inconvenience. The next morning, she greeted me with a cheerful smile, asked about my sleep, and suggested I take a little break outside the house to rest. Rest from what? I wasn't the one overwhelmed, but she said it with such sweetness that it almost sounded like kindness until I saw her eyes. Her eyes held impatience. Her smile hid annoyance. Her tone asked me to leave without using the words. It was then I realized something important. She didn't want me gone because she needed peace. She wanted me gone because she wanted control, and she thought I was too old, too soft, or too dependent to see what she was doing. But she had forgotten something. The house she was trying to push me out of, the home she ruled like a queen, wasn't hers, and her smirk would soon disappear. The moment she remembered whose name was on the deed. When I told her, "Honey, this is my house," the shock on her face was priceless. But that moment didn't come out of nowhere. It came from years of history she knew nothing about, years she never even bothered to ask about. She assumed I was just an old woman tagging along, living under her roof, interfering with her married life. She didn't know the truth. She didn't know the sacrifices that built those walls, those floors, that roof she claimed as hers. She didn't know how much I had fought for that home long before she joined this family. 12 years ago, right after my husband passed away, the world felt cold and empty. I had spent years caring for him through sickness, watching the savings drain, watching bills pile up. When he died, the house we lived in wasn't ours anymore. Medical debt had swallowed everything. My son was still young, just starting his career. He tried to help, but he had nothing to give yet. I didn't want him drowning with me. So I moved into a tiny rented room, started working at a local clinic, saved every dollar I could, and promised myself one thing. One day, I would own a home again. It took years, long, tiring years. Early mornings, aching hands, late shifts. But I kept going. I saved every tax refund. I bought groceries with coupons. I poured every spare dollar into one dream. A stable home where my son could visit without shame, where my future grandchildren could come safely, where I could grow old with dignity. Finally, after nearly a decade, I had enough saved for a down payment. When my son got married, I knew life was about to get harder for him. Grown children always struggle when building their early life. Rent, bills, furniture, baby expenses. I didn't want him and his wife to worry about housing. I didn't want them to start their marriage under pressure. So I bought this house. Not a fancy one, not brand new, but warm, solid, and safe. When I handed my son the keys on his wedding day, he hugged me and promised he would pay me back. I told him there was no rush. I told him family didn't need deadlines or contracts. I told him the house was for all of us. My daughter-in-law smiled back then, acting grateful, sweet, welcoming. She said, "Thank you so much, Mom. We'll make this house our home." I believed her. I thought she meant every word. But something changed in her after the baby was born. She stopped seeing the house as a gift. She stopped seeing it as something I built. She started seeing it as something she owned. She made little changes, moving my things into a storage box, replacing my furniture with her new expensive pieces, rearranging rooms without asking, calling everything her design. She walked around the house giving directions like she had personally signed the mortgage. Whenever friends visited, she said things like, "This is our place. We've been building this home. We're so proud of this house." She never once mentioned where it came from. The worst part was that she believed it. She erased the part where I worked for a decade to make that home possible. She erased the part where I helped pay their wedding loans. She erased the part where I took care of bills quietly so they could enjoy their early marriage. She erased the years I spent building a place from scratch. But I didn't correct her. Not then. Not yet. I didn't want to embarrass my son's wife. I didn't want to bring conflict into the home. I didn't want to use the house as a weapon. So I stayed silent. But as she grew more comfortable, her demands grew too. First, she wanted me to take a day off from helping with the baby. Then she wanted me to give her space in the living room. Then she wanted me to stop reorganizing her kitchen, even though I was the one who set it up to begin with. Slowly, she treated me like a visitor, then like an intruder, then like a nuisance. And now she had crossed the final line, telling my son I needed to move out of her house. That's when the truth snapped back into place inside me. This house was not hers, it was mine, bought by my hands, paid with my work, protected with my years. She married into a home, not the other way around. And the moment she decided she could kick me out was the moment she activated a part of me she didn't know existed, the part that remembered every dollar spent, every document signed, every sacrifice buried quietly so they could live comfortably. She thought she could remove me like unwanted furniture, but she forgot one small fact: you cannot evict the owner. And soon, she would learn exactly what that meant. After that hallway moment when she heard me say the words she never expected, "This is my house," my daughter-in-law didn't calm down. She didn't apologize. She didn't reflect. She went quiet, too quiet. A silence that didn't mean peace, but planning. A silence that meant she was now thinking, watching, calculating. And the way she behaved over the next few days made it painfully clear that she had no intention of backing down. The first sign came the next morning. I walked into the kitchen to make breakfast, something I'd done for months. But when I reached for the frying pan, it was gone. I opened another cabinet. Empty. Another. Nothing. Every pot, every pan, every plate I used daily had been moved. She walked in with the baby on her hip and said with a soft voice, "Oh, I reorganized. You were using older cookware. I prefer my things." Her tone was polite, but her eyes were cold. She wasn't reorganizing. She was replacing, erasing my presence piece by piece. Later that afternoon, I tried to enter the nursery to check on the baby while she showered. For the first time ever, the door was locked. I knocked gently, thinking maybe it had jammed. She came out, hair wrapped in a towel, and said, "I just want privacy with my baby sometimes." Privacy. A locked door. In a house I bought. It was almost laughable, but the sting of it stayed. She started cleaning right after I cleaned, as if undoing my work. She moved all of my framed photos, pictures of my late husband, my son as a child, even my parents, into a cardboard box in the garage. When I asked her about it, she simply shrugged and said, "I want a clean, modern look." She didn't ask. She didn't discuss. She just erased my history from the home I built. But she wasn't finished. She began whispering to neighbors on the porch. I saw her talking to the woman across the street, pointing back toward the house, rolling her eyes as if living with me was torture. One afternoon, while I watered the plants, the neighbor approached me and said gently, "I hear you're planning to move to a senior home soon." My chest tightened. I hadn't said anything like that. No one had. That's when I realized she wasn't just pushing me out physically. She was shaping a story, one where I was the one wanting to leave. Her behavior grew bolder. Cupboards slammed whenever I entered the kitchen. She sighed dramatically when I sat on the couch, as though my presence stole the air from the room. She switched laundry detergent and told me to stop washing the baby's clothes because my scent bothers him. My scent, my hands, my existence. She also began waking my son during his naps, wanting private moments with him, whispering with him behind doors. I knew she was feeding him a version of the story where she was the overwhelmed mother and I was the intruder. And little by little, I saw him believing her. One evening, I overheard her say, "If she moves out, we can finally relax. You and me and our baby. Our own space." The word "our" burned in my ears. She kept repeating it. Our bedroom, our kitchen, our guest room, our home. Not once did she say, "your mother's house." Then I heard the worst part. She said, "Once she leaves, we can use the house as collateral for the car loan. The bank doesn't care whose name is on the deed if we're the ones living here." My heart stopped. So that was the plan. She wasn't pushing me out because she wanted peace. She was pushing me out because she wanted control over the house, over my son, over the future. She wasn't asking for space. She was preparing to claim everything. The next morning, I went to get my purse and found it on the balcony. left outside in the cold. My clothes were shoved to one side of the closet. My slippers had been moved to the garage. She was testing me, inch by inch, waiting to see if I would break. Waiting to see if I would pack and leave on my own so she wouldn't have to look like the villain. She underestimated me. She thought quiet meant weak. She thought kindness meant stupidity. She thought age meant helplessness. I watched her plan forming. I watched my son folding under pressure. I watched myself disappearing from the home I paid for. But while she plotted against me, I was already planning my next move. Because she forgot the one fact that mattered. In the war she thought she was starting, I held every legal card. And she hadn't even checked the paperwork she was trying to steal. The day everything finally cracked open between me and my son started quietly, almost too quietly. He came home from work, looking tired, moving slowly, avoiding my eyes the way people do when they know a hard conversation is coming. I was sitting at the dining table peeling apples for the baby's puree. The house felt strange, tense, heavy, like all the walls were listening. My daughter-in-law hovered in the hallway pretending to fold laundry, but she wasn't folding anything. She was waiting for her moment, waiting for him to say what she wanted him to say. My son sat across from me, cleared his throat, and stared at his hands. Not at me, not once. I could feel my heart beating in my ears. I knew that conversation was coming. I just didn't expect it to hurt this much. Finally, he whispered, "Mom, maybe you should take a break. Maybe stay somewhere else for a while, just until we settle in with the baby." My hands stopped peeling. I placed the knife down slowly. A part of me knew this moment would come, but hearing him say it out loud was something I wasn't prepared for. I took a deep breath and asked softly, "Is this what you want, son?" My voice didn't shake, but my heart did. He still didn't look at me. He just rubbed his forehead and said, "It's what's best for everyone right now." The house is too crowded. Crowded! That word hit me like a blow. This house, my house, was suddenly too crowded for the woman who built it, paid for it, and offered it to him without asking for a penny. He didn't say it with anger. That almost made it worse. He said it with defeat, with guilt, like he was choosing the easiest path, not the right one. He was choosing peace with his wife over honesty with his mother. His silence toward her lies had now become agreement. My daughter-in-law stepped into the doorway at that exact moment, pretending she wasn't listening but smiling slightly, that small, victorious smirk she was getting good at hiding. She said, "We just want the baby to grow up in a calm environment. You understand, right?" The way she said it, slow, controlled, almost gentle, felt like she was patting me on the head, dismissing me like a child. She wasn't asking me. She was telling me. She was using my own son as the weapon to push me out. I looked back at him. His eyes flicked toward her, then away from me again. That hurt more than anything she could ever say. He was choosing convenience, choosing quiet, choosing his wife's comfort over my dignity, not because he didn't love me, but because he was afraid of conflict with her. And fear can make a grown man act like a stranger. I asked again, "Is this what you want?" His voice cracked when he said, "It's best for now." Not yes, not no. Just a weak sentence that told me everything. That was the moment something inside me broke. Not anger, not rage, but the realization that my son had become a different man. The boy I raised, the boy who used to hug me tight when scared of thunderstorms, the boy who promised to always take care of me. He was gone, replaced by someone who couldn't even hold eye contact with his own mother. My daughter-in-law stepped closer, pretending to be compassionate. She placed her hand on his shoulder and said, "We appreciate everything you've done, but we need space to be a real family." A real family. That phrase made my stomach turn. In her mind, I was not part of their family. I was an extra piece of furniture, something to move out of the way. I looked at my son one last time and asked quietly, "So you want me gone?" He finally lifted his eyes, and in that split second, I saw the truth. He didn't want it, but he wasn't strong enough to stop her, and that weakness, broke the bond between us in a way I had never felt before. I nodded slowly and stood up. I didn't cry in front of them. I didn't beg. I didn't raise my voice. I held my dignity tightly, like a shawl around my shoulders. I walked toward my room while they watched. My daughter-in-law whispered, "Thank you for understanding," as if she had won. But she didn't know that while they thought they were pushing me out of their home, I was about to show them the truth, that I wasn't being removed from their house. Because it was never theirs to begin with. Everything from that moment forward would change their lives forever. And the next steps would be on my terms, not theirs. That night, after my son and daughter-in-law went upstairs, laughing softly as if they had just solved a great problem, I sat alone at the kitchen table. The same table where I used to drink tea with my husband. The same table where I dreamed of a peaceful old age surrounded by family. But instead of warmth, the house now felt cold. Their footsteps upstairs sounded like strangers living above me. I stared at the dark window and realized something very important. If I left quietly, they would take everything. They weren't just pushing me out, they were planning for something bigger, something involving money, something involving control, something involving my house. I wasn't going to sit and cry. I wasn't going to be pushed out of my own home like a piece of old furniture. If they wanted to push me into a corner, they forgot that corners give you walls to lean on and strength to push back. The first thing I did was go to my bedroom closet. Behind the winter coats, hidden where no one ever thought to look, was a small fireproof box. I brought it out, placed it on the bed, and opened it. Inside were the documents they never bothered to ask about. The original deed to the house, the payment receipts, the mortgage statements, my signature on every line. Not theirs, not even once. I read each page slowly, letting the truth settle in me like calm water. This was my house, legally, financially, completely. Next, I opened my laptop and checked something I hadn't looked at in months, my bank statements. That's when I saw it. Several unfamiliar charges, small amounts at first, $50 here, $100 there, then larger ones, $700, $900, then automatic payments I didn't authorize. Their names appeared attached to the transactions. It wasn't a mistake. They had been using my account without telling me. Not enough to alert the bank, but enough to help themselves. Enough to soften their own bills while smiling in my face. My hands didn't shake. My heart didn't race. I felt calm, because when betrayal becomes clear, pain becomes purpose. I screenshotted everything. I printed every statement. I even opened the nursery camera, something they assumed I didn't know how to operate. I saw her standing in the room whispering into her phone. "Once she's out, we can talk to the bank." She spoke like she was discussing a package delivery. Not my life, not my home, just an object she wanted control over. That was when my decision was made. The next morning, I went to see my lawyer, an old family friend who'd helped me buy the house years ago. He listened without interrupting. Then he looked at the stack of papers and said, "They're digging a hole they don't even know they're standing in." His words gave me strength I didn't know I had left. He pulled up property records, loan applications, and bank activity. Within an hour, he had uncovered even more than I expected. They weren't just planning to use the house as collateral, they had already tried. They applied for a loan using the property address, pretending it was theirs. They didn't succeed only because the bank required the owner's signature. And of course, I never gave it. But the attempt, documented and recorded, was more serious than they understood. Fraud. Attempted identity misuse, unauthorized financial activity, and most of all, coercion of a senior, which the law takes seriously. My lawyer looked at me and asked, "Do you want to press this? You have every right." I took a long breath. "Not yet," I said. "First, I want them to know the truth. I want to see their faces when the ground they thought they owned disappears from under them." He nodded. "Then get ready," he said, "because once you open this door, everything changes." Before leaving, I picked up one more piece of support, my friend Officer Ramirez. He'd been close to my husband and still checked on me from time to time. When he heard the situation, He didn't laugh or shrug like it was family drama. He leaned forward and said, "If they're trying to force you out of your own home, that's unlawful. And if you want backup when you talk to them, I'm here." I drove home feeling steadier than I had in weeks. I wasn't afraid anymore. I wasn't confused. The truth was finally clear. They wanted me out so they could use my house for their own debts, their own loans, their own plans. They wanted me gone so they could claim ownership without ever earning it. But they forgot something important. You cannot steal from someone who knows exactly where every document is, who signed every paper, who kept every receipt, and who survived far worse storms than a selfish daughter-in-law and a weak son. By the time I walked through the front door again, I was ready. They thought they were forcing me out, but I was about to show them. I wasn't leaving. They were. The showdown happened the very next day. They walked into it without even knowing they were stepping into a storm. And I didn't raise my voice once. I didn't slam a single door. I didn't even change my tone. I simply did something they never expected. I stood up for myself with the truth they had been ignoring. They came home from grocery shopping, laughing together, carrying bags like everything in life was perfect. They didn't see the black car parked across the street, my lawyer's car. They didn't notice Officer Ramirez's patrol car parked a few houses down. They didn't sense the shift in the air inside the house. But I did. I sat at the dining table with a cup of tea, the deed to the house laid neatly in front of me, and a folder thick with documents they thought I was too old to understand. My daughter-in-law walked in first and froze when she saw my lawyer sitting on the couch. My son walked in behind her and blinked like he was seeing a ghost. His voice shook. "Mom, what's going on?" I didn't answer him right away. I didn't need to. My lawyer stood, greeted them politely, and placed the deed on the table. My daughter-in-law's eyes widened. Only then did I speak, calmly and clearly. "This is my house," I said, "and it always has been." The silence that followed was heavy and sharp. My son's face paled. My daughter-in-law's lips parted, but no sound came out. My lawyer then opened the folder and placed several printed pages in front of them, attempted loan applications, unauthorized charges, proof of bank access, and most importantly, legal documents showing I was the sole owner of the property. His voice was steady and firm when he said, "You attempted to use this home as collateral without permission. That is illegal." Her face twisted in shock. "What? No, this must be a mistake." But he cut her off. "The bank rejected your application because the owner's signature was missing. The owner is sitting right here." My son sank into a chair like the weight of the truth was crushing him. He stuttered. "We didn't mean, we were just," she said. His wife grabbed his arm, glaring at him to stay quiet. Then she tried to gather herself, forcing a shaky smile. "This is a misunderstanding," she said, trying to sound sweet again. "We just thought, since we live here, and the baby." My lawyer didn't move. Intent doesn't matter. What matters is the law, and legally, you two have no right to this property. She looked at me then, really looked at me, and for the first time since she married my son, I saw fear in her eyes. Real fear. Not the fake anxiety she used to manipulate him. The kind that comes when someone realizes their entire plan is falling apart. I took a deep breath and said the words I'd been saving. "You wanted peace and quiet," I said. "You're going to get it." Her brows knitted, confused. My lawyer slid 2 papers across the table, formal eviction notices. My son gasped. She jerked her head back like she had been slapped. "You have 30 days to leave this house," my lawyer said. "If you refuse, we will proceed with legal action." She shot to her feet. "You can't do this. I have a baby." Officer Ramirez stepped into view from the hallway. "A baby doesn't override property law," he said flatly, "and attempting to remove the rightful owner is harassment." Her mouth opened and closed, completely stunned. My son stood slowly, tears in his eyes. "Mom, please! Don't do this." I looked at him with all the love and all the pain in my heart. You already did, I said softly, when you asked me to leave my own home. He broke down. She grabbed his arm again, hissing, Stop! We can fix this. Don't cry in front of them. Even then, she cared more about control than truth. My lawyer placed one final document on the table, a letter stating the house could never be used as collateral without my written permission, now officially filed with the county. She read it and snapped. You're doing this on purpose. You want to ruin our life. I looked at her calmly. No, you tried to ruin mine. I'm simply stopping you. Her face twisted. She pointed at me with shaking hands. We took care of you. We let you stay here. Officer Ramirez stepped forward. Ma'am, she let you stay here. You're tenants without a lease. She owes you nothing. My daughter-in-law collapsed back into a chair, defeated. My son looked at me with a broken heart, finally understanding how badly he'd failed me. I stood, gathered the documents, and said the final line. You wanted me gone from the home I built. Now you will leave it. And for the first time in that house, there was real peace. Once the eviction papers were on the table and the truth was finally exposed, the real unraveling began. My daughter-in-law's mask didn't slip. It shattered completely. The sweet tone, the gentle smiles, the forced politeness, all gone in an instant. What was left was the real her, loud, angry, and terrified of losing the house she thought she controlled. She clutched the papers with shaking hands, her eyes darting between me, my lawyer, and Officer Ramirez like she was trapped. And in that moment, the woman who spoke so boldly about needing space suddenly needed something very different: mercy. She turned to my son first, gripping his arm so tightly he winced. Say something, she hissed. Fix this. Tell her we're not leaving. But my son stood frozen. The reality finally sank in for him. All the lies she fed him, all the manipulations, all the whispers about me being a burden, they had been part of a plan much bigger than he imagined. His shoulders slumped, his face turned pale, and for the first time he realized he had chosen the wrong side. My lawyer remained firm. You have 30 days. That is generous, considering everything you attempted. She let out a sharp laugh, bitter and desperate. Generous? You're throwing out a new mother. You're heartless. I raised my head and said calmly, You tried to throw me out first, except you tried to do it from a house that wasn't yours. Her lips trembled, but she didn't deny it. Then came the part that exposed her fully. She inhaled sharply, smoothed her hair back, and adopted a soft, trembling voice. The one she used whenever she wanted pity. She looked straight at my son, ignoring me completely. Maybe we can stay if she signs part of the house over, just until we're stable. My son blinked, stunned. What are you saying? She squeezed his hand. We're a family. We deserve stability. Maybe your mom can give us the guest wing, or half the ownership. She's old. She doesn't need much. Her voice dripped with fake concern. There it was. Not an apology, not remorse, not regret, but negotiation. Not for peace, but for property. My son's face changed, his jaw tightened. He pulled his hand away from hers. You said you wanted peace, he whispered, but all you want is her house. It was the first time he truly saw her. She panicked. That's not what Mark, stop! Don't twist my words! But her voice cracked. Her act was collapsing. My lawyer pushed the deed closer to them. This home belongs to her alone, not partially, not temporarily, fully. My daughter-in-law swallowed hard, and I saw it, the exact second she realized she had no leverage left. Then she turned to me, not with respect, not with apology, but with calculation. She knelt down beside me, placed her hand on my arm, and whispered in a trembling voice, Please, think about the baby. He needs stability. He needs a home. Don't do this to him. The moment she said those words, something inside me hardened. She wasn't protecting her child. She was using him, using an innocent baby as a shield, using motherhood as a tool to manipulate me. I removed her hand from my arm gently but firmly. I will always be there for the baby, I said. But this house is not part of your plan anymore. She stared at me, shocked that her last emotional weapon failed. Then she snapped again. Fine, then give us money to leave. At least help us find another place. You owe us that after everything we've done. My son stepped back, disgusted. Everything we've done? She didn't look at him. She didn't look at the baby monitor on the table. She looked only at the deed. My son's face twisted with disappointment. Do you even care about me, or is it all about what you can take? She didn't answer. Her silence was the answer. Then came the final blow. My son turned to me with tears in his eyes. I'm sorry, Mom. I was blind. I touched his hand gently. You were scared. That's not the same as being cruel. My daughter-in-law scoffed. Oh, please, you're all acting like victims. But nobody listened to her anymore. Officer Ramirez stepped forward. You have 30 days. Start planning. She stormed upstairs, slamming doors. My son followed slowly, his head low, realizing the family he thought he built was crumbling because he trusted the wrong person. And as I sat there at the table, looking at the deed, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Control, strength, peace. Because in the end, it wasn't anger or revenge that exposed her. It was her own actions, her own greed, her own character, and for once, she couldn't hide behind excuses, tears, or lies. The weeks after the showdown felt strangely calm, almost too calm. The house that once felt heavy with tension finally breathed again. No slammed cabinets, no whispered insults, no footsteps stomping down the hallway. My daughter-in-law packed her things in angry silence, refusing to look at me. My son stayed quiet, moving slowly, as if each decision weighed 10 pounds. They stayed in separate rooms most nights. She blamed him for everything. He finally saw the lies she'd been feeding him. Their marriage cracked deeper each day, not because of me, but because their relationship had been built on control, not love. 30 days passed quickly. On the morning they left, she marched out with her suitcase like she was staging a dramatic exit. She didn't say goodbye. She didn't even acknowledge the baby's grandmother standing on the porch. She strapped the baby into the car seat roughly, not gently, not lovingly. Her face was tight with anger, but behind it I saw fear, the kind people feel when they realize they have lost every bit of power they once thought they had. My son took longer. He stood in the doorway, looking around the house slowly, touching the walls, the railing, the place where he grew up. He looked like a man searching for pieces of himself he had misplaced. When he finally walked toward me, he stopped, swallowed hard, and whispered, "Mom, I'm sorry." It wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic, it was real. He looked broken, ashamed, like he finally understood every warning sign he had ignored. I touched his cheek and said, "You found your way back. That's enough." He cried, not loud, but quiet, heavy tears he had been holding for too long. He stayed with me for a few days after she left, figuring out custody, finances, and what his next steps would be. We didn't talk much about her anymore. He was embarrassed. I didn't press. Healing doesn't come from forcing conversations. It comes from quiet understanding. I made him breakfast like I used to when he was little. He changed light bulbs and fixed my porch like he used to for his father. Slowly, I saw the boy I raised returning. Eventually, he found a small apartment close by so I could still help with the baby. He made sure to put my name as an emergency guardian, something he said he should have done from the beginning. He promised he would never let anyone push me out of his life again. And for the first time in a long time, I believed him. After they left, my home became peaceful again. I rearranged the furniture the way it used to be. I unpacked my framed photos, placing them back on the shelves where they belonged. My wedding picture, my son's school photos, the old black and white picture of my parents. The house felt warm again, not just in temperature, but in spirit. I painted the guest room a soft blue, turned the nursery into a cozy reading room for myself, and planted new flowers in the backyard. For the first time in years, I had space to breathe, think, and feel safe. I also met with my lawyer again, not to fight, but to protect. Together, we added legal protections to make sure no one could ever try to take my home away from me again. I also updated my will, making sure my grandson would one day inherit the house, not anyone else. I placed everything in a safe deposit box, organized and secure. I learned that trust should be given, but documents should be written. A few months later, I joined a local seniors group. I made new friends, took gentle exercise classes, and even learned how to paint wildflowers. I found myself smiling more often. I laughed again. I had mornings where I woke up without heaviness on my chest. The quietness that once felt lonely now felt peaceful. One afternoon, while rocking my grandson in my living room, I realized something. I didn't lose a family. I lost the illusion of one. The truth was simple. If someone needs you to be small so they can feel big, they are not your family. If someone needs you silent so they can feel powerful, they are not your family. If someone tries to push you out of a home you built, they are not your family. But those who return to you with honesty, those who admit their mistakes, those who choose love over pride, they are worth forgiving. My son visits often now. He brings the baby, brings groceries, brings stories about work. He hugs me longer. He listens more. He stays present. He says, "Mom, thank you," without needing a reason. And every time he says it, I know he finally understands what I carried silently for years. In the end, I learned something I wish every older woman could hear. You are not a burden. You are not disposable. You are not in the way. You are the foundation. And foundations don't move for anyone. I didn't just protect my home. I reclaimed my life.